Ever heard of a leaf tier?
Not exactly a common dinner party conversation starter, is it?
Right. I mean, before I started digging into this whole thing, I had no idea. None. It sounds like something straight out of, Tolkien or something.
Definitely has a certain mystique to it, but it's a real job and an important one in the tobacco industry.
And we're diving deep into it today, thanks to RoleCatcher. They've got this really detailed guide, which is awesome because, who else is going to give you the inside scoop on a career as a leaf tier, right?
Right. It's not exactly your run-of-the-mill career path.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole leaf tier thing. What does a leaf tier actually do? Paint me a picture.
All right, so imagine this. You're in a tobacco processing plant. Could be anywhere, really, but you're surrounded by these huge, mountains of freshly harvested tobacco leaves.
Okay, I'm already intrigued.
And the air, it's thick with this, I don't even know how to describe it. It's earthy, but almost sweet at the same time, tobacco.
Yeah, it's pretty distinct.
And you're there, right in the middle of it. Your hands are sifting through these leaves, feeling for the perfect texture, the right size.
This is already way more hands-on than I was picturing.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about grabbing any old leaf. Each one is graded based on these really specific quality standards: size, texture, color, even things like the veins on the leaf.
So there's a real skill to it.
100%. It's a craft. The best leaves, those are bundled together, carefully aligned, and then secured with a special type of leaf called a tie leaf. They use this really specific knotting technique. It's kind of mesmerizing to watch, actually.
It's I don't know, almost like an art form.
Exactly. And just like with any art form, you don't become a master overnight. RoleCatcher's guide, it actually lays out these 4 distinct career stages for a leaf tier. You start as a trainee, then move up to junior leaf tier, then senior leaf tier, and finally, if you're really at the top of your game, you can become a lead leaf tier.
Okay, so there's a whole career ladder here. Tell me more about this progression. What does it actually look like to climb those ranks?
Sure, so as a trainee, think of it like an apprenticeship. You're learning the ropes, literally, from more experienced tiers. Shadowing, getting a feel for the leaves, mastering those tying techniques. It's all about building those foundational skills and developing that eye for quality.
Right. Got to learn the alphabet before you can write a novel.
Exactly. Once you've got those basics down, you move up to junior leaf tier. This is where you start flying solo. You're tying your own bundles, grading leaves based on those quality standards we talked about, and you even start training those new trainees coming in. You're responsible for your own output at that point.
Oh, wow. So the mentorship aspect comes in pretty early on.
It does, yeah. And this is also where you start to see that shift from purely tactile skills to more tactical thinking, which is a key part of this whole career path. Because when you reach the senior leaf tier level, you're not just responsible for your own work anymore, you're overseeing a whole team of junior leaf tiers.
Okay, so the stakes are getting higher. What does that look like day to day? What kind of problems is a senior leaf tier solving?
Good question. Think quality control, hitting those production targets, even collaborating with other departments to make sure everything runs smoothly. Let's say a batch of leaves arrives with unexpected moisture levels, right? It happens. A senior leaf tier, they've got to figure out how to adjust the process without sacrificing quality or speed. They're the problem solvers.
Wow, so it's a lot more than just tying leaves together. There's real leadership and strategic thinking involved at that level.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't even stop there. You can keep climbing that ladder all the way to the peak lead leaf tier. And at that point, you're basically the conductor of this whole tobacco orchestra, right?
Okay, I am loving this analogy. Keep going, you're on a roll. What does a lead leaf tier do?
So they're responsible for leading and managing the entire leaf tier team, which means training programs, performance evaluations, all of it. But here's where it gets really interesting, and I think this is kind of cool. They're also analyzing production data, like really digging into the numbers to figure out how to maximize efficiency.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, like they might look at the data and say, okay, if we tweak the humidity in the drying room just a little bit, can we speed up the processing time without sacrificing the quality of the leaves? That kind of thing.
From handling individual leaves to handling data and leading teams, that's quite the career trajectory. But let's be real for a second. No job is perfect. What are some of the downsides that RoleCatcher points out about this line of work?
Oh, for sure. And they don't sugarcoat it, which I appreciate. One of the biggest downsides, honestly, is the physical demand. It's a lot of standing, lifting, and doing the same motions over and over again, which can be tough on your body.
And I imagine those peak processing seasons are pretty intense.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's a seasonal industry, so the workload can be, well, let's just say it's no walk in the park, especially during certain times of year. We're talking long hours, sometimes even weekends if the harvest is big.
So you got to be willing to put in the time.
You do, and you got to be flexible because it's tied to agriculture, right? So
Yeah.
there's always that element of unpredictability, like a bad crop year. That could mean less work for leaf tiers.
That makes sense. It's
Yeah.
not just about the day-to-day tasks. It's about understanding that bigger picture, how the whole industry ebbs and flows, and how that might impact your, well, job security. Let's be real.
Exactly. And speaking of the bigger picture, RoleCatcher, they actually give you a bit of a sneak peek into what to expect during a leaf tier interview.
Oh, okay. So now that we understand like the nuts and bolts of what a leaf tier does, let's talk about how you actually land one of these jobs.
Right. Got to get your foot in the door.
Exactly. What kind of questions should someone expect? Give us the inside scoop.
So they emphasize that it's not just about, can you tie a leaf? Can you tell a good leaf from a bad leaf? They really want to see that you're a problem solver, that you can work independently, but also as part of a team. So you might get questions like, how do you ensure consistent quality when you're doing this for hours on end? Or tell me about a time you noticed a problem and took initiative to solve it.
So it's about demonstrating those like soft skills alongside your technical know-how.
Yeah, and RoleCatcher actually takes it a step further, which I think is really interesting. They have these AI-powered interview prep tools.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can actually record yourself answering practice questions,
Okay.
and then, get this, the AI gives you feedback on things like your body language.
Wait, the AI analyzes your body language? That's wild.
It's like having a personal coach in your computer, right? Like, are you making eye contact? Are you fidgeting too much? That kind of thing.
That's amazing. It's those subtle things that can make such a big difference in an interview.
Totally. And I think that's what's so cool about RoleCatcher. They're all about giving you the tools to put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
But, and this is something else I found really interesting, they don't shy away from, let's call it, the elephant in the room.
Okay, and what's the elephant in the room when it comes to, well, a lot of industries these days, but especially something like tobacco?
Automation.
Okay.
It's the big question mark, right? And they address it head on, talking about how automated machines are being used more and more in the tobacco industry to handle those traditional leaf tier tasks.
Yeah, like sorting and bundling, all that stuff.
Exactly.
So does that mean, like, robots are coming for the leaf tier jobs?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that simple. While some of those more traditional roles, yeah, those might be impacted, I think automation also creates new opportunities within this field. The key is going to be adapting, evolving your skill set.
So it's not necessarily about, like, fighting the robots. It's about learning to work alongside them.
Exactly. Those leaf tiers who can operate those machines, maintain them, maybe even program them, those are the ones who are going to thrive. And honestly, who better to do that than someone who already knows tobacco like the back of their hand? That hands-on experience, that deep knowledge of the product, that becomes even more valuable in an automated environment.
It's like the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
The tools might evolve, but those fundamental skills, that knowledge, that's what sets you apart.
And that's something RoleCatcher emphasizes a lot, showcasing your skills and experience. Like, they even suggest building a portfolio of your work.
Wait, a portfolio? For leaf tier work? That's kind of a cool idea.
Right, I thought so too. But it makes sense when you think about it. It's about documenting your process, highlighting that meticulous attention to detail that you have, showing how you've adapted to new technologies. Like, maybe you were even part of implementing some of those automation processes in your workplace. That's huge.
Yeah, it's like a highlight reel of all your leaf tier expertise.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the skills, the challenges, the unexpected opportunities, even how to ace that interview. But before we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the leaf tier, I have one final question for you, kind of an out there one.
Hit me with it.
Okay, so RoleCatcher, they talk a lot about transferable skills.
Yeah.
Right? The stuff you learn in one job or field that you can then apply somewhere else. So here's my thought, and maybe I'm way off base here, but a leaf tier, they have this crazy attention to detail, this deep understanding of a physical product, and they have to be adaptable in the face of things like automation. Could those skills, could they translate to opportunities outside of the tobacco industry?
That's a really interesting question. And honestly, at first glance, you might think, what does tying tobacco leaves have to do with, like, Silicon Valley?
Right. It seems like a bit of a stretch.
It does. But then when you really break it down, the skills that a leaf tier develops, they are surprisingly versatile. Like imagine a former lay leaf tier. They take their quality control expertise to a tech startup that produces, I don't know, handcrafted digital devices. They'd be checking for those imperfections, ensuring consistency, that kind of thing. Those are valuable skills no matter what you're applying them to.
Right. It's about that meticulous eye for detail, whether you're looking at a tobacco leaf or a circuit board, or even like they could take their knowledge of a natural product in its life cycle and apply that to a company focused on sustainability, maybe even in the tech sector.
Totally.
Uh,
It's all about thinking outside the box, right? Breaking free from those traditional career paths and recognizing the true value of your skills. Who knows, maybe we'll see a whole wave of former leaf tiers becoming like pioneers in these fields that we haven't even imagined yet.
Now that's a future I'm excited to see. So there you have it, folks. Our deep dive into the world of the leaf tier. A huge thanks to RoleCatcher for the insights. It's a career path that's clearly evolving. But with the right resources, a willingness to adapt, and maybe a little bit of that adventurous spirit, the possibilities really are endless.
It's a good reminder that every job, every single one, no matter how niche or how unknown it might seem, has valuable lessons to teach us. And those lessons, those can unlock some pretty amazing opportunities.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those career goals in sight.